Coming up on Tech News Weekly, Surface Hub 2 is big and modular, and you'll have to wait for it. Also, how to access digital media from your library for free. Oculus Quest is the company's next big VR thing, and Instagram lost its founders. What exactly does that mean for the app? Join us next for Tech News Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 51, recorded Thursday, September 27th, 2018.
This episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by CashFly. Make this the last month your CDN bill gives you a headache. Join the thousands of others who trust CashFly's reliable network. For a complimentary, detailed analysis of your current CDN bill and usage trends, visit twit.cashfly.com. Welcome to the show. This is where every week we talk to the people making and breaking the tech news. And speaking of breaking,
what happened?
Was actually broken. Last week I thought maybe it was broken, and it turns out it was. And so I've got this blue claw here.
You won't break that hand again. Not with the claw on, anyways.
Probably not. No, I won't break that finger.
Okay, so you broke it, but did you make that?
Did I make this cast?
Yeah. To fit with the theme of the show. Making and breaking.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I get it.
All right.
I have medical insurance. I don't know about you.
I don't think you made that.
Okay. Well, with the speed of the news cycle this week, it is tough to remember that Microsoft held one of their biggest conferences this week, Ignite. Joining us to discuss all the news from the show is Brad Sams, author of the upcoming book, Beneath the Surface. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Sorry to hear about your hand. The only thing I would have pointed out about that cast is you could have made it black, and then it would match Microsoft's new hardware they're going to announce next week.
Oh, I totally should have done that.
That's usually top of mind for you, Megan.
Yeah, exactly, because they let me host Windows Weekly for 3 weeks while Leo was gone. I don't know if Mary Jo and Paul told you that, Brad, but they were three amazing shows.
Best shows ever.
Yes. Okay, so first, tell us what was the biggest event, the biggest announcement at the event?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways to look at this. There's the things that they announced that we knew were coming, like SQL Server 2019. That's kind of boring stuff. But the one thing that they did talk about, which was a little complex, which isn't, well, I guess it is traditional Microsoft, is Surface Hub 2, which is their next major update to the Surface Hub product line. Now, they showed this thing off, I believe, in May of 2018. And they showed it off, and you can see it there, and it looks beautiful, and it looks gorgeous. And they said, hey, this thing is coming in 2019. And then we get all the news for Ignite, and it's like a record scratch moment here. And technically, a Surface Hub 2-like device is coming in 2019, but the device that they actually showed off earlier this year is not going to arrive until 2020. What they're going to ship this year is what they're calling Surface Hub 2S, kind of like an Apple-esque name, if you will. But what that is, that's going to run the Surface Hub 1 hardware and software experience in the body of a Surface Hub 2. And if you want that Surface Hub 2 that they showed off earlier this year, you're going to have to wait until 2020. So that was kind of one of those things. It's like, hey, this is coming, and then they kind of clawed it back. And we're still trying to figure out whether or not that was Microsoft realizing they can't ship it in time, or if this was always the plan. Because the one argument that they made was that for customers that deployed a Surface Hub 1, they don't want the new one. They want the same OS, so it's across their entire org, which I buy. But in typical Microsoft fashion, they had poor communication earlier this year for that. A couple of other things on the agenda. They announced Office 2019 for on-premises for Mac and Windows is now available, although I believe it's rolling out to commercial customers first, and consumers can get it here in a couple weeks. And then the other big thing that was announced that didn't get a lot of play, but I think this is going to end up being a big deal for anybody who uses Office a lot, is called Unified Search. And what Microsoft is doing is allowing you to use that search box that they have in every single Microsoft 365 application, and you can now pull content content from almost anywhere. And so that's going to change the game. You're no longer searching for Format Painter and that kind of stuff. And then we'll see. Again, it's going to come down to Microsoft's execution. And then the last major thing that they showed off relates to the Surface Hub 2, and now it's starting to leak out into other products, is they were showing off Windows 10 with multiple users logged in, up to 16 on the Surface Hub 2. But the most unique aspect about that was that the app permissions can now go down to the app level, which is kind of interesting. You can imagine a scenario where you two are logged in, sharing a PC, although you can't, they're saying you're not going to be able to do it on a PC, but let's say you're sharing a Hub 2. And one of you has content that the other person cannot own. They might be able to read it or whatever, but they can't own that content, be it financial content or HIPAA content. And you're both logged in. If you open 2 Word documents, both from your OneDrive, it will not let you copy and paste it inside that instant. It's just a real granular way of controlling your data in a collaboration environment.
Interesting. One thing that stood out to me on the Surface Hub 2 announcements was this kind of modularity aspect to it, the processor cartridge. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this goes back to, there's going to be 2 products. There's going to be Surface Hub 2S, which is the old software, old hardware in the new frame, and then the Surface Hub 2X, which is the brand new kind of shiny object in the room that everyone wants. And so what Microsoft is telling us is that if you buy a 2S, the older version, or the new version running the old stuff, there's a modular compute unit inside. And what you can do is at some point when they release the 2X, you'll be able to replace that compute unit in the 2S. It's just a modular piece, just like you were saying. It pulls right out, you put the new one in, and you have an upgraded experience running the new OS and everything else. Now, we don't know how well that's going to work. We don't know if they're going to charge more. I would imagine that if you're going from a 2S to a 2X, you're going to have to pay for that somehow. Microsoft isn't talking specifics. I did ask, though, that the connection port for that hardware is proprietary, and they weren't going to give me any more information as much as I pried.
So this wasn't an announcement at Ignite, but what do you make of Consumer Reports revising or re-revising their opinions of the Surface? What do you make of that news? That's today.
Yeah, so what they announced is that, well, they're revising their opinion of everything but the Surface Go, which I believe that is their Microsoft's newest piece of hardware. I think this is a good thing for Microsoft, obviously. It's been a long time coming, but Microsoft, even though they've been out making hardware since about 2012, they're still relatively new to this game, and they're starting to get their feet stabilized. They're starting to understand the production dynamics of hardware, and they're getting much better at, frankly, just servicing their own hardware that's out there. So I think this is a testament to that hard work that they've been leading up to, and they're finally getting some recognition that, hey, these things are now finally reliable. It took them a couple years to get there, but it's hard to look at this and say this is anything other than good news for Microsoft.
Another announcement that you actually wrote about was this Windows virtual desktop. I don't know. I want to call it OSAS. OS. Yeah. OS as a service, I guess. Who is this for and why?
So this is definitely an enterprise play. And what this does is allows you to run a virtualized desktop on other hardware. And so you could open up a machine, log in, and have your own version of Windows that is running in the cloud. And so if you couple this announcement with what Microsoft is saying about Surface Hub 2, where they can have up to 16 users logged into one Windows instance, it starts to get real interesting, because you would have to think that this virtual desktop is going to support that same type of a scenario where you have that app level authentication and security mechanisms. So I think it's a touchy subject, not for me personally, but because there's a lot of Microsoft partners that offer a very similar service. And we see Microsoft walking in here kind of as the juggernaut in the room in this space, because they control the software, they control the cloud. In some instances, they control the CDN that's making it all possible. And so we're in the very early days of this. They also announced Managed Desktop as a service about 2 weeks before Ignite. And so when you bundle all of this together, Microsoft is pretty much completing the IT circle. They have the software, they have the desktop, they have the cloud, they have the security, and now they are actually going to be doing help desk work as well. And so Microsoft is positioning themselves to be a one-stop shop for all of your IT needs, which is pretty different than where they were maybe about 5 years ago, where they said, hey, we have great partners who will help you do this. And now they are happily, well, taking over that role. I don't think customers or their partners are going to be too happy about that, though.
So they also made some announcements about Cortana, and you wrote about this too. What is her future? Is she like going to be like Alexa's assistant? What is she, an assistant's assistant? What's going to become of Cortana?
So this is a fascinating topic because Microsoft has a problem, as they do with many different things. Cortana is this brand where it was attached heavily to Windows Phone, and we all know what happened to Windows Phone. That ship has sailed, and then Microsoft tried to launch a Cortana speaker called the Invoke. There's actually one behind me back there. And it didn't do so well. They're on fire sales at Best Buy. It never sold very well. They cut the price in half almost a month after it was announced. And then Microsoft and Johnson Controls announced this glass thermostat that was supposed to be Cortana based. And then when they released it, it said, hey, it also works with Google Assistant and Alexa. I shouldn't have said that. My office is
we have a hard time not saying that too.
Just call her Allah. I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. And so you've got this digital assistant that's in every version of Windows 10, but Microsoft seems to be pulling back the reins a little bit. And I think they showed off at Ignite what might be the future of Cortana. And I'm going to draw a parallel to Surface here because I know quite a bit about it. That's why I'm writing a book about it. But Surface is the hero of the PC industry. That's what Microsoft wanted to be, right? It's what do you compare a MacBook Pro to? It's a Surface Book 2. What Microsoft, I think, is doing with Cortana is making it the queen of all of their bots. It's going to be the best bot that Microsoft can build. And then what they're going to do is pitch that to partners to build their own bots. Because if you watch the keynote from Satya, he said, hey, BMW came to us, and now they're going to use our stack to build their own digital assistant. And so this is the right move, I think, for Microsoft, because they're not going to beat Amazon's product. They're not going to beat Google's product. They're not going to beat Siri, for that matter. And so they find themselves in this position where their digital assistant isn't going to win, but they have this awesome AI happening underneath. And you got to understand, Microsoft's machine learning and AI capabilities are separate from Cortana. Cortana is just where all that stuff manifests itself. And so they'll continue working on all those features and it'll be added to Cortana. But I really think that Cortana's future is just a showcase to potential partners. Be like, look, come to, if you're Hyatt Hotels or whoever, come to us. We can build you an AI assistant overnight. It can be called Hey Hyatt and can be up and running tomorrow. And it'll have all these features in 24 hours. And I think that's what they're going to be using Cortana as going forward. And I think that's where it's going to reside.
Sounds like a smart direction, actually.
Well, Brad, you write at Petri.com and Thurrott.com, and you also, as I mentioned, have a book coming out soon, Beneath the Surface. Yep. Tell us about it. Yeah,
well, basically, my career got started leaking Surface stuff. It actually started with, I was a Microsoft blogger for a few years, and then the Surface RT 2 came around, and I got a bunch of information, and my career has revolved around that Surface. And about 5.5 years ago, I think everyone remembers that Microsoft did $900 million write down of Surface inventory. And so I've been waiting to write this story for a while, waiting for the right time. And when I saw that the MacBook Pro was having all those issues, everybody was comparing it to the Surface Book. And I was like, okay, I think it's time. And so I reached out to a bunch of current and former Microsoft employees who worked on the product or are working on the product, nearly 24 interviews. And I'm just writing the inside story, the drama. I mean, Microsoft almost killed this product twice. Steve Ballmer wanted to rename it twice. And there was just a lot of dynamics inside the company that made this brand possible. And the story just walks you through basically the launch of the RT all the way up until, well, what will be the October 2nd event. And if I can keep my head down long enough, it'll be out by Thanksgiving. I'm a little over 100 pages into it right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And you can find out more about it or pre-order it at beneathasurface.com. Thank you so much, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Take care.
Best of luck with the book.
Of all the institutions that have had to evolve in the past decade or two, I think the public library is one of the most interesting. Joining us to talk about the latest news in his library apps is Steve Potash, President and CEO of Overdrive, creator of the app Libby. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Well, thank you, Megan and Jason. And let me ask you this. Do both of you have a library card?
Yes,
of course.
I have a library card. I can't speak for Jason.
No, I definitely have a library card.
Well done. Because I think, as you both know, the library today, especially for your audience, has invested in becoming an anytime, anywhere resource. So I have my Samsung, my new Note 9, and I'm proud to say I have checked out and ready for me to enjoy anytime, anywhere, all the latest bestsellers, both ebooks I can read on the screen, audiobooks, which sync up when I'm in the car through Bluetooth or in the house. And it's unbelievable that 24 hours a day, anyone for free with a library card can get the benefit of every New York Times bestseller and anything for your life, whether it's your business, your career, your kids, your travels, any interest at all.
And I love it. I love telling people this, and they're shocked because we just don't think of things being free really anymore.
Right. Well, and we also think of libraries as being very specific to books, like hardcover or softcover books, and not kind of these digital assets.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I'm going to say that libraries it started 15 years ago, actually, where libraries have always experimented and evangelized all forms of reading. And all of us have the memories of story time in the library, or support when we were students going to the library for homework, or finding that next author to fall in love with, or a whole generation now celebrating 20 years of Harry Potter. But it's been 15 years since almost every public library started investing in educating their patrons. And by the way, it's free for you as a consumer, but authors and publishers are getting paid very handsomely through the money that libraries and schools spend. And indirectly, you're paying it through some of your real estate and other taxes.
So first, for people who haven't heard of Overdrive, tell us what Overdrive is, and then we'll get to Libby.
Sure. Well, Overdrive is the company that has been working with authors and publishers for over 30 years to create the ebook markets. We started in the 80s putting ebooks on floppy diskettes, in the 90s CD-ROM, and then 2000 forward, all online, download digital books. We work with every publisher, every author in over 100 languages. And we help authors and publishers sell their ebooks, supplying these digital files, ebooks and audiobooks, to both retailers, bookstores, and the like. But I'm here to tell you about something that is the culmination of a partnership we've had with libraries all over the world. And Overdrive is a company that developed the Libby app. That's Libby, Libby. And it is a free app for your iOS device, for your Android device, for your Windows device. You can even run it in any browser. The free Libby app, once you install it, Libby becomes almost your best friend, helping you go to the library, discover books for yourself, for your family, for your kids, for your career, and it's all for free. Once you install the Libby app, the first thing Libby will do is say, let's find your library. And I'm proud to say that Overdrive works with pretty much every public library in North America. So whether you allow your device using your location to say, is this your library, based on geolocation, or you could type your zip code, Libby will show you a list of libraries in your location wherever you are. And I'm proud to say that Overdrive is working with libraries and schools in 75 countries, and as I said, worldwide. So you install Libby, Libby will find your library. Now, you two are obviously sophisticated and appreciate the value of the library card. But for those that don't have a library card, that's the last step. And I'm proud to say most libraries allow you to get a library card online. And Libby in 30 U.S. markets will actually enable you to get an instant library card using your cell phone, using your area code and number, your 10 digits. I'm proud to say, like in Sacramento, or here in Cuyahoga County, Cleveland, Ohio, or San Antonio, Texas, Multnomah, Portland, Oregon, you can download Libby, get an instant library card within seconds, and start to download and instantly read or listen to all the best New York Times bestsellers. I'm always, keeping a full bookshelf here. Mm-hmm. And, I love also showing for the kids that we even have We support the industry standard called EPUB 3. And so these are synchronized ebooks and audiobooks that kind of read themselves out loud. Here's Marvel Comics, yeah. Tony Stark. By the way, this drives them crazy when I show this overseas. They want to learn English from Iron Man.
No kidding.
But whether it's an ebook or an audiobook, on my current bookshelf, whether it's Crazy Rich Asians, which is kind of fun. I got the new Woodward book. It's doing pretty well. And even from LAPL, you can download for free popular magazines, whether it's Car and Driver or the tabloids or, any of the hobby magazines. Ebooks, audiobooks, magazines, all free from your public library, courtesy of your public library.
Steve, I just have to let you know I'm a huge fan of your app. Back in April of last year on another show I do called All About Android, your app was what I brought into something we call the Arena, which is like the end of episode. Everyone on the show brings an app, and it's kind of like they go in there, the listeners vote on it, and then the next week we see who got the most votes. And of course, Libby won, so thank you for the win. I really appreciate it. But I'm a huge fan of this app because it allows people to tap into something that exists that is free, but they probably don't know. And I'm curious to get your take as far as why people aren't aware that, like why people are kind of stuck in thinking that a library is this one thing when in fact there's this whole other stock of digital goods that are accessible there that you are obviously connecting people to through Libby. Why are people so unaware of that?
Well, Jason, that's a very good question, and it varies in markets. So I can tell you when we go up to like the Pacific Northwest, as you would imagine, in Seattle, between the Seattle Public Library, King County, Amazon, the home of Kindle, there's a much higher awareness and a much higher adoption of digital books from the library, and it varies. Some libraries are much better at putting the word out. And I'm proud to say that the American Library Association and libraries nationally are in a multi-year campaign called Libraries Transform. And it's not only what we do with digital books, it's how libraries are evolving to improve the communities they serve, whether it's helping those that are looking for skill sets, they are offering entrepreneurial support, maker spaces, whether it's learning English as a second language, career and job prep. We're proud to say that at least digital books and audiobooks and Libby are just a growing list of value propositions that libraries are investing in to improve the outcome of all their citizens. You're right. I believe that there's a significant opportunity for libraries to do a better job, and that's why I'm proud to be here introducing your audience to the Libby app.
So we have a question in our chat room from someone asking if you can use Libby to download ebooks from other libraries, not your library.
Well, Overdrive is working proudly with pretty much every public library in the United States. So I would venture that if they go to their local public library, they can install Libby and start to borrow and enjoy digital books, ebooks and audiobooks, wherever they are in North America.
So it doesn't have to be just what their library has.
It has to be the books. The business model is Overdrive also partners with authors and publishers. It's the publishers and authors that have given Overdrive permission to utilize their digital files in a permitted copyright, approved business model that libraries can acquire the permission to lend. So here's how it works. Let's say you're in Sacramento and you determine, I want to go try and, borrow a book for myself, my family, my kid. I can go to the Sacramento library, install Libby, get a library card, and browse. What you will initially be browsing is a growing collection of all the ebooks and audiobooks that, let's say, Sacramento Library has purchased. I'm proud to say that in most major markets, they've been building ebook and audiobook collections now going on 15 years. Many of the major cities have ebook collections that are in the tens of thousands, and they add new releases almost every day. So if you are in a certain community, you're limited to the books that your library has bought. But once you're in there, many libraries allow you either to borrow a title that's immediately available. In many cases, we are using the same business and lending models that libraries enjoy for print books. So for example, if the library bought 15 copies of Harry Potter Book 1, Sorcerer's Stone, 15 people can download the ebook at once. If you are not in that first 15, you get to, through Libby, place a hold. That means that you're in a wait list or in a queue. And instantly, when a copy comes back to the library ebook collection, it'll automatically put on your shelf. You'll receive an alert, and you usually have access to that ebook or audiobook for 14 or 21 days. So to answer your question, they can't get every book, but they can get every book that the library has bought for lending in their community.
And I like that it automatically returns it, because that's my problem with books.
Yeah,
that,
right.
I just forget to return them. But if I've had books that, well, it'll check it out automatically, or it'll remind you that, this hold just came in. It's, you can have it, and then they'll return it when it's time to return it. And I don't have to think about anything.
When we first introduced the service, we used to tell libraries, never late, never lost, never stolen, and no late fines. You can never, when libraries invest in digital materials like this, they get the benefit of serving anytime, anywhere. And I'll mention, if you have that Sacramento or Los Angeles Public Library card, you can be sitting in your hotel room in Tokyo, where we have a parent. We're very proud to be part of a global tech company called Rakuten. Mm-hmm. And Rakuten Overdrive now, with our sister company Rakuten Kobo, has been promoting access to digital books and reading worldwide. But you have that library card, you have that Libby app, you are never alone. You can always browse, borrow, or take with you a whole shelf full of ebooks and audiobooks. And I'll mention that you can use all these offline. So before you head to the airport, visit the library with Libby, download some ebooks and audiobooks, and you'll have a wonderful flight or trip.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for joining us. Steve Potash is the president and CEO of Overdrive, and it's just overdrive.com, and yep. The app is available in the App Store, or like you said, on the web as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure talking to you. All right, so we've got Oculus. This is another big event that's been happening this week. Oculus Connect has been underway in the Bay Area the past few days anyways. We finally got a look at the next big VR system, and joining us to chat about the standalone VR headset called Oculus Quest is Sam Machkovech, a familiar face from Ars Technica. Welcome back, Sam.
I was just on like 25 minutes ago, wasn't I? I was live on twit.tv. That's what I recall. But I am currently at Oculus Connect in San Jose, and what's kind of hilarious is right behind me is the new Oculus Quest headset in glass. It's just sitting here as an extra unused unit in the press center.
It looks so sad in glass. Yeah. It wants to be on your face.
Where's the axe? Break glass in emergency.
Right.
They give us all of those as swag when we leave the event. They give us access, yes.
So after a year of speculation on what the Oculus Santa Cruz hardware was, we heard about that last year at the Oculus Connect event, and then now this is kind of the fruits of that labor. This is it. Of course, it has a different name. What do you think? Was it worth the wait? Was it quite what you expected, or a little different?
Well, let's break down exactly what this is. $400 gets you a virtual reality kit that does not require a computer, does not require extra webcams, does not require wires. And it works in what's known as 6 degrees of freedom, meaning I can put this thing on and I can walk around an open space as if I had a more expensive HTC Vive. Comes with a couple of controllers so I can simulate my hands, comes with some buttons and triggers so I can pretend to pick up a tennis racket or a gun or anything like that. And while I have tested this before, those tests came in more limited rooms that looked fake. They had these weird fake rugs and fake things on the ceiling. This has been played out in more open rooms without any like furniture or any sort of fake room stuff. And what I would not consider ideal ways to play in a space like this, and it works. I've played Super Hot, which is a popular VR game. That was the most incredible thing. I finally got to crack that open today, and I was able to just run all the way around with no cords. I was able to dodge around Matrix style, pick up guns, attack things, dash from one side of the room to the other, and it just worked. And it has a Snapdragon 835 system on chip. Now that's what you would expect in a Pixel 2 or a Galaxy S8. So it's a cell phone part, but it's pretty high end and pretty recent to power that much 3D action inside of 72 frames a second going on in your face. And it feels really smooth. It's not the same as a Vive Pro hooked up to a $2,000 computer, but it's definitely better than Oculus Go and some of these more limited smartphone rigs. It works. It's fantastic.
What is the difference between Oculus Go and this Oculus Quest?
Yeah, Oculus Go is you sit down. You can't get up. You can't move around. It's known as 3 degrees of movement. You can turn your head, but as soon as you do shoulder-to-shoulder movement, it all breaks.
So it's Oculus Don't Go, really?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, in fact, it's sort of, you wonder if they kind of wish they'd saved the name, since you can actually go when you're using this thing. This one, you can run all the way around a room. In fact, I tested this out in a 4,000 square foot arena in which I was able to run and duck and hide behind cover, which actually appeared in my virtual world. And there's an article about that at Ars Technica, and it is bonkers. That sort of feature, that sort of a laser tag style VR arcade experience will come later, because this is coming in spring 2019, this hardware. And some of these greater, more ambitious things are coming later, but it worked. Just being able to run all the way around a giant room with no extra cameras or things attached to me was unbelievable.
But there's a difference here when you're talking about inside-out tracking, in the sense that obviously these cameras are mounted onto the visor itself, so it's seeing forward. It's being able to map the room that's in front of the person that's in this experience. But you have no awareness of anything behind you. Is that right?
Well, that's the idea, is that when you calibrate this, and we haven't seen the calibration, is that you will look all the way around. And we saw other people in the who work for Oculus kind of look all around a room and hold the wand out. It's the Oculus Touch controller. Apparently mapping it out and sort of saving that memory. Perhaps it's looking for certain things in the room that it can identify no matter when you spin around. But the little sensors inside of the headset have a very wide angle. They sort of jut out in this interesting bulbous way. So exactly how it'll work in a full room is something we didn't get to test with only 5 or 10 minutes at a time. But it was convincing in this limited state, and we would we can't wait to actually see how it works in a home. But it was way more convincing than we expected, especially after our limited demos of what had been known as Santa Cruz back last year.
Yeah. What about the games? You mentioned Super Hot. Obviously, Super Hot VR. Well, it's one of my favorites of the limited, full-scale VR games that I've played. That's definitely one that I probably spent the most time with. But that gives you a chance, if you are, and I assume you are, very familiar with Super Hot VR on other systems, to directly compare it to the performance you got out of this. You mentioned it's a Snapdragon 835 processor, so it's a mobile processor. But would you say the experience is roughly the same, or were there visible differences?
I would say roughly the same. That demo, I think Super Hot is an interesting case. If you've never seen it, it's very stylized, sort of this limited polygon kind of old school look, but very sharp, high contrast stuff. So it's not as detailed as a Gears of War or something like that. But what that meant was I was able to move quickly and go up to things and look for fine details as I got my face right up to them. And they all looked smooth. It was a lot of the same gameplay and same challenges where enemies would come up and they moved when I moved. This sort of weird Matrix-like slowdown thing. And that was really what was incredible. I think the main thing is that a 72 frames per second refresh on that was the only difference, which is slightly less smooth than what's known as the 90 frames a second standard on other headsets. But that just worked. Other games were brand new. We played a tennis demo in which one person had a larger living room and was able to run all the way back and forth in this living room to chase after balls. And I was in a more limited living room where I stood still and balls kind of magically warped to me. And that felt smooth. It made me think, oh man, if Wii Sports had actually been like this, maybe it would have been more fun than 5 hours. And then there was a third demo that was the worst, which was walking around a haunted zone. You had to use a joystick while walking around in real life. And I just kept my feet planted. That wasn't as fun. It didn't feel like I was in this sort of wireless world. It was just kind of, it didn't look very good, and it felt uncomfortable to switch between joystick and walking. It was disorienting, which means new games that do this wireless stuff are going to have to find some new design language, because being completely wireless, having that ability to just feel like a true Kung Fu VR master is going to require some new language. A guy told me that for the tennis demo, they have to set up whole new visual language to make sure people don't run and hurt themselves, because you can.
Yeah.
So were there any other announcements? Was the whole Oculus Connect just for Oculus Quest, or was there anything else that they talked about?
We got a lot of forward-looking statements about what is to come. Clearly, they are working on a new Rift. In fact, Zuckerberg came up and said, we're not announcing Rift 2, but we're working on it. And it was earlier this year at the F8 conference that we learned about some focal depth kind of tech that's going into that, some new aural sensing earpiece kind of stuff that will make sounds a little more realistic all around you. But there was no push to show any of that inside of the demo halls. There's some of the older computer Rift. There's definitely stuff for Oculus Go, because that's selling. In fact, John Carmack, one of the main guys at Oculus these days, talked this morning about the sales just wildly exceeding expectations for Oculus Go. And so talking about making apps for that, which is for sit down, but it's $200. People are using it. They're trying it out. They're getting into media apps with that. So it seems like there's definitely a development community interested in that media use case. But in terms of gaming, the stuff for Oculus Quest was so much more riveting. Once I played with that and then went back to a computer and a Rift, a wired Rift, I said, yeah, it's a little bit smoother, but I want to go back to that wireless stuff. I want to go back to running around the room and feeling like a superhero.
Yeah, you really do get a different sense when you're disconnected from wires entirely. It's all about immersion, right? And all of these levels, these ways of eliminating the hurdles that would keep you from being immersed, in an immersive environment. So that really seems effective.
And it's interesting because basically everyone is saying, oh, it's not powerful enough. I want some high end. But I'll tell you, they really seem to understand that there's a price point and there's a performance level that goes with that price point. And I think people are going to be able to design for this. There's been a language of we need to be ready for smartphone VR. So people have been making games that compromise, that come up with things that aren't super realistic. And man, just that sensation. I think this event is it's very developer centric. And I think a lot of devs are going to put this on and understand the potential of wireless and what sacrifices they have to make in 2018 to get there. And they're going to do it. And there will be cool games as a result. If they're anything like that super hot demo, we're in for some really cool wireless stuff when this comes out in spring 2019.
Sweet. The bummer is we have to wait until spring 2019. Sam Machkovech, your work can be found on Ars Technica, and I don't know if you heard, Sam, but you and I are collaborating on the next season of Know How Gaming. That went up today.
That little thing. Oh, that was a fun episode. That was really good. And yeah, every Thursday, I believe, tune in to watch Jason and me fake like we are experts on gaming.
Well, I'm faking like I'm an expert. You're the actual expert.
Well, we know what we're talking about and really, really love it. And that's been really fun. So I can't wait for you guys to see all the fun that we had filming some of those. And we've got more coming, especially from between now and the year-end guide. Just keep it tuned to twit.tv, everybody. And obviously, arstechnica.com if you want to see more of our deep dive on Oculus Quest and everything that's been at Oculus Connect.
Yes, absolutely. Sam Machkovech, thank you so much, man. And we'll see you next week on
I gotta go grab my complimentary axe and bust that thing.
All right, cool. Videotape it if you would. That would be great. All right, take care, Sam.
After the break, Kurt Wagner is here to give us the scoop on the future of Instagram. But first, this episode of Tech News Weekly is brought to you by CashFly. Do you remember the last time you were woken up at 3 a.m. with frantic phone calls because your CDN experienced another outage? And then you dreaded opening your email where you'd find hundreds of complaints from users. With unreliable tech support, every second your site is down is money being lost on your watch. Being the one to answer the tough questions about your CDN coverage is no picnic, especially when you can't even predict your own CDN costs because of unpredictable usage-based bills. Make the switch, my friends. CashFly has been building trusted CDN relationships since 2002. CashFly eliminates CDN outages, helps customers reach new markets, and controls costs for every one of their customers. They guarantee 100% availability with their bulletproof 100% SLA, supported by an expert team of smart, easy to talk to, and agile techs who can answer all of your questions the first time without having to pass you around to 5 different departments. If you're in software or podcasting like we are, or really any business that relies on having your content readily available to your consumers, it is hard to predict bandwidth consumption for the month. Even worse, it is frustrating when companies try to lock you into a contract that's not flexible and is not built around your unique demand and traffic patterns. Make this the last month your CDN bill gives you a headache. Say goodbye to logging in multiple times a week, or worse, even daily, trying to track your CDN usage. On average, customers who switch to CashFly save more than 20%. Just take a minute and imagine what you could do with that 20%, and with all that time that right now you're wasting micromanaging your usage or worrying about having to commit to a long contract based on a growth plan that you didn't even write. That's a crazy way to buy CDN. As Leo says, we've been hosting all of our podcasts, the audio, the video on CashFly for nearly a decade. Every month, our viewers and our listeners download petabytes of data fast and flawlessly. Twit would literally not exist without CashFly. Join the thousands of others who trust CashFly's reliable network and let CashFly give you some sanity back. I have an exclusive offer just for Twit listeners, just for you listening or watching. CashFly is giving away a complimentary detailed analysis of your current CDN bill and your usage trends. See if you might be leaving 20% or more on the table. Learn more at twit.cashfly.com. Go to twit.cashfly.com, and we thank CashFly for their support of Tech News Weekly.
The week started off with a bang when news broke that the founders of Instagram, Kevin Systrom and Mike Krieger, were stepping away from the company that they created amidst reports of increased influence by Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, I'm sure among other things. We have Kurt Wagner from Recode joining to talk about the drama and, more importantly, what this might mean for Instagram going forward. Welcome back to the show, Kurt.
Hey, Jason. How you doing?
Doing awesome. I love that you're coming in from outside. It makes me wish that I was out in the sun.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're gonna have to put up with my my in the wild view. I hope that's okay.
It absolutely is. I love it. So let's start with the influence of the co-founders on the company. Instagram obviously has been insanely successful for a long time. Many people would say that they were instrumental to that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, 100% instrumental. And you know, if you talk to people who work at Instagram, they will tell you that Kevin was the product. He was the vision. He, like, everything about the product just was Kevin. And then Mike was, you know, the heart and soul of the culture of the company. Like, these two guys were what made Instagram. And so I think the biggest concern right now is not, you know, it's not like everyone's going to leave Instagram tomorrow if they put some new CEO in, which obviously they're going to have to do at this point. But I think it's more like, is someone else who comes in going to lose kind of this magic that they feel like they've captured? And anyone who's had a new boss knows how hard it can be to adjust to new leadership, to new, morale. People who are loyal to those two, you would think might, start looking for new jobs. So I just think that there's a lot of unknowns right now, and that's got to be the most concerning thing if you're Facebook.
Now, this happened on Monday. And a lot of people are, on Twitter were saying you don't quit your job on Monday unless you're like really upset. How much of a surprise was this resignation? It really seemed to take a lot of people online, anyways, by surprise. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's the kind of thing where we had been hearing, and I had been hearing for the last couple months, that there was some tension between Facebook and Instagram, at least in terms of Facebook's involvement in the app. At the same time, the only thing you ever saw publicly from the company was how great, everything was going. And obviously, Mike and Kevin had been there a long time, and it had always kind of been held up as like the example of a great acquisition, right? Like, hey, look, we acquired Instagram. They run independently. They're huge because of Facebook, but also they're making a lot of money. Like, it just felt like this thing was working so well, which is why I think it came as a surprise to people. It's not necessarily that no one could have seen this coming if you had, put the pieces together, but it's hard to imagine when things seem to be going really well that people would want to leave. And so I think that was more than anything the surprise. And clearly, last thing is that Facebook communications, the comms team was not ready for the New York Times to break this news. They didn't have a statement ready. They were like uncharacteristically quiet. So I think from the press side of things, you could tell that this did not go the way that they usually do when people leave the company. So that was an alarming thing as well.
So the creators of Instagram were very gracious when they left. They didn't say any of the stuff we are assuming. But then Brian Acton, who created WhatsApp, who was not so gracious before when he left, and also this week. And a lot of people are criticizing him for biting the hand that fed him, calling him a sellout, crying into his money. What do you make of the way he acted this week?
Well, yeah, I mean, the obvious is like, okay, you're a multi-billionaire now, so no one feels super sorry for you that things didn't go the way that you wanted them to go, right? The thing that's kind of crazy, and I've never started a company, so maybe that's why it's hard to sympathize, but, when you sell your company to someone and you become a mega millionaire or a billionaire, like there are strings attached, there are consequences, right? Like you no longer own the thing that you sold. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that there's a ton of sympathy for him. At the same time, I can see why he would say, oh shoot, we had promised all these people that we weren't going to run ads and now Facebook's going to run ads. I feel really bad. But, he sold his company to an advertising business. So I think that part of me maybe sympathizes a little bit with him, but at the same time, it's really hard to feel sorry for people who have made this choice. And I don't think anyone fully should blame him. He's a billionaire, and I don't think a lot of us would turn down $1 billion. So it is what it is. But he definitely came across as a little maybe petty with his interview this week.
As far as Instagram is concerned, there have been a lot of changes, obviously, and many more happening behind the scenes probably than we know. But as far as the ad network is concerned, been a hugely successful kind of taking the Facebook model of ads and integrating that with Instagram. Do you know, were the founders ever opposed to that? I mean, sure, it's kind of what made them insanely rich, but from a product standpoint, were they ever opposed to this idea of hyper monetizing this app that they created?
I never got the sense from any conversations with them or others who worked at Instagram that there was, a backlash about putting ads on the app. I know they were very careful about it. I think the first ads showed up like 5 years ago, and Kevin Systrom was literally single-handedly approving all of the ads at first on Instagram, making sure that they kind of fit the aesthetic that they wanted to convey. So, they were heavily involved in kind of ramping that up. And certainly as a user, I have noticed a higher volume of ads than I have in the past. But at the same time, as far as I can tell, that was not the issue. It was not something around Facebook coming in and saying, hey, we want to make money from your app. I think it was more around the product direction and really just like the integration between Facebook and Instagram. Again, Instagram had really operated independently, both the product and the business for such a long time, and they saw that kind of being threatened. And I think that was what drove this away.
Well, can you tell anything about the future of Instagram from this? I mean, will it become more like Facebook? Like right now, I don't mind I agree with you that I see more ads on Instagram than I used to, but I don't mind them. And I think I definitely buy more things from Instagram ads than any other ads that I see. Right. But I mean, can we tell, like, are they going to be mining our data in more ways, or can you tell anything from them leaving how Instagram might change?
Well, they were already mining all of our data from Instagram, and
but the pictures were so filtered and beautiful. I can't believe that.
I know. No need to fear. They've already gotten everything they need from you, so you don't have to believe that. No, I think what we've learned from Facebook is that usually when they have a big opening like this, especially one where it's like a product-focused opening, they usually look internally. They replaced, when David Marcus left Messenger, they brought up an internal person. When Jan Koum left WhatsApp, they brought up an internal person. I would bet a lot of money that whoever takes over Kevin Systrom is already in the Facebook ecosystem. I highly doubt they'll bring in someone from the outside. And so I think what you kind of can learn from that is that all of these people have a Facebook mindset, right? Like the thing that works for Facebook is what they know. And so we'll probably see more of that. I would not be at all surprised to see more integration between the two apps. What's that going to look like? Who knows? Like maybe the messaging clients are going to start, maybe Facebook Messenger will for some reason start working on Instagram or vice versa. Maybe there's going to be Facebook Watch is going to be ported over to Instagram instead of the IGTV. Like those are the kinds of things that I think are most likely, although I have no idea which of those are going to happen. I don't expect them to immediately come in and say, hey, we're going to, change this thing that has been working so well for so long and, drive away all the users. I mean, these guys they're smart, right? Like they don't want to mess this up, or at least they shouldn't want to mess this up. So I think anything that's going to happen is probably going to happen slowly. And let's look back on this 2-3 years from now, and then we'll probably get a sense of what's going on. It probably will not be something that we notice like in the next month or two.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense that they wouldn't want to do things too swiftly and mess things up along the way. Although, of course, what I end up thinking about is with the wall, with that barrier being removed, the barrier being the founders of the app. Now you have the influence of Mark Zuckerberg and that Facebook way of thinking. With little resistance, or at least the resistance that they would have gotten from those founders with the initial vision. And I wonder how that translates into the users and the users' perspective on the service. Obviously, Facebook's fighting an uphill battle right now with people's opinions of the service and understanding how much they've been sold out and blaming Facebook for a whole bunch of things. If there's more of that influence that comes into the Instagram camp, which I would say a lot of people use because they feel it's outside of those influences, whether they are or not, that's a different question, then they do risk kind of sacrificing what makes Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, the founder element's really interesting. And, we had this conversation a couple years ago about Twitter, right? Like, hey, we need the founder to come back in to make these like insanely important product decisions because they are the only one with the, quote, moral authority to change Twitter. Then all of a sudden Jack comes back, and that's a totally different conversation. I would argue not enough has probably changed over there. But let's say, with Instagram, all of a sudden the founders are out the door. Like there's no one necessarily who says, well, this isn't why the app was created. This isn't how I envisioned this when I built it. And obviously products evolve and businesses evolve. So some of that is probably a good thing. But at the same time, if you love Instagram the way it is and you truly bought into the Kevin Systrom vision of what Instagram can and should be, yeah, you're probably going to be concerned right now because he's not in the building anymore to defend whatever that is.
How is Snapchat doing, especially in comparison to Instagram? I know in my own home, like I have a Rift where my 2 13-year-olds, it's all Instagram all the time, and they don't even ask for Snapchat. And my daughter's all Snapchat and some Instagram. Like, how is Snapchat doing? We don't really hear much about them anymore. I mean, not that I know they still exist, but sorry, what was that? I know I'm a house divided.
House divided. That's crazy. Okay.
It's true.
Good to know. Snap has been it's been relatively quiet because there's not a whole lot of positive stuff to talk about with Snap. I mean, obviously the stock is near an all-time low. They just lost their chief, strategy officer, Imran Khan. He was basically number 2 guy behind Evan Spiegel. Their head of communications is leaving. Like, there's not a lot of positive news from Snap. I mean, they had the deal with Amazon this week, which I actually thought was really interesting, where you can kind of take a picture of a product through the Snapchat camera and it'll pull up a link to that product on Amazon. So it's kind of like a shopping thing through the camera, which I thought was fun. But at this point, it kind of feels like the damage to Snap has been done. You know what I mean? I don't see all of a sudden Kevin Systrom leaving and everyone saying, oh my gosh, well now, we're going to leave Instagram and go to Snapchat. I just don't think it works quite like that. I think we like to talk about it, but the vast majority of people, they care about the product experience. They don't care about Kevin Systrom being in the building. And so, those are tied in some ways, as we've talked about. But again, for the next 6 months to a year, no one will probably even know from the product that there's a new boss. So I don't think people are going to necessarily leave Instagram for Snap. I think if we had rewinded maybe a year or two, this would have been a chance for Snap to capitalize and say, you know, if they were in more of a position to talk about how this would benefit them, that would be great. I just think like at this point, there's so much struggle for them that I don't know if they can capitalize on this kind of incident.
It makes you wonder if maybe they needed to be bought too. Like as great as Instagram was, they might not have ever survived without being bought by Facebook.
Oh, yeah. I think Snap should totally be acquired. I mean, think about how nice it would be. And I've been making this argument about Twitter again for a while, which is if you don't have to report your quarterly earnings and you don't have to go in front of investors every 3 months and say, hey, we're losing a bunch of money, and all you did was let the product speak for itself, you know, we'd have a totally different perspective of Twitter than we do today, right? Because every single person uses Twitter. And so you would think, oh my gosh, this must be an incredibly successful business. But then they report their numbers and it's usually not. So the same thing goes for Snap. You know, if all you knew about Snap was that every teenager in America was using the app, you would think it was super incredibly successful until you see the business numbers. So, you know, if someone like a Google or an Amazon came in and bought them and said, all right, you know, we're going to give you a couple of years to clean this thing up. In the meantime, just keep being socially relevant. We would probably all think that it's super successful. And so the problem, from what I can gather, is that Evan Spiegel has no interest in selling. And you know, I can't blame him. But at the same time, that just means he has to live with reporting those numbers every 3 months.
Yeah. Yep. Kurt Wagner from Recode, recode.net. It's always great to get you on, Kurt. Thank you so much for
Thanks, you
joining us
guys.
today.
Yeah, thanks for putting up with my my background here. So appreciate it. Next time I'll be at a desk.
It's all good. I like the outside camera shot personally, but thank you so much.
Take care.
All right,
We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
And finally today, we thought we would present you with this video of a seal hitting a kayaker in the face with an octopus. And you may read into it whatever you would like.
There comes an... Oh, man. Could you imagine if you got slapped across the face with an octopus by a seal? He just shakes it off, though.
He does,
so,
yeah.
You know,
maybe
like,
that's the lesson you're learning. Like, just shake it off.
Keep rowing.
Yeah,
just keep rowing.
Keep rowing. Or you're the kayaker. I feel a little bit like the seal today. I don't know.
Good video to play at the end of today's episode. I think it sums things up.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a sea lion.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know. Did it have ears? That's how you tell the difference.
I just saw the octopus in its mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is that a sea lion?
One of them has ears and one of them doesn't.
I guarantee you it goes. So if that's a seal, I don't know. I think it's a seal. But Scooter X does not. Anyways, it's the important details that we're getting to the bottom of.
I think the more important deal is detail. Is it a whole octopus or just
a
one
tail or just a tentacle?
Yeah, they're not tails.
No, you're right. They're not.
Arm. Their arm. The tentacle are the circular things. That's the arm. I don't know. I think it's.
It looked like it looked like a piece of octopus. Maybe they can make some sushi later or something. All right. I don't know. Maybe I'm hungry. But not for octopus. That's true. Tech News Weekly records live every Thursday at 2:30 p.m. Pacific at twit.tv/live. You can be part of the show by emailing us at tnw@twit.tv.
Subscribe to our show at twit.tv/TNW. You need it now more than ever, I promise you. And if you want to tweet at me, all your funny videos, all your dog pictures, all your anything, tweet it at me. I'm at Megan Maroney.
All your seals and your sea lions can come to me at Jason Howell. Thanks to Burke. Thanks to Josh. Thanks to Jammer B. Everybody who helps us do the show each and every day. We really appreciate it. And thanks to you for watching. We'll see you next time on Tech News Weekly. Have a great weekend. Bye. Oh, I almost did it.